The National Desk, America's News, now.
One state already reeling from severe storms this morning, braces for another tonight where the tornado watch is already in effect.
Everybody says this is crazy, this is not the trial that should happen. It's a very sad day. This is a dark day in America.
Closing arguments in the first criminal trial against Donald Trump. What's being said inside the courtroom while the campaigns speak just outside? And it was once seen as a cheap meal on the go, why many feel fast food is more of a luxury they can't afford. This is the National Desk, America's News Now. I'm Amira David. Right now, Texas under the threat of tornadoes once again. The National Weather Service has issued a tornado watch for West Texas until 9 p.m. Central tonight. These storms also threatening parts of Oklahoma and Louisiana tonight as 25 million people brace for winds of up to 80 miles per hour and hail in excess of 2 inches in diameter. This as Texas has more than 1 million customers who are without power following powerful hailstorms that hit the Dallas-Fort Worth area just this morning. Along with golf ball-sized hail, wind gusts over 85 miles an hour, toppled trees and power lines, turned over tractor-trailer trucks and damaged multiple buildings, according to the National Weather Service. We'll be following developments as these storms progress throughout the evening, and you can stay up to date 24/7 on air and online at thenationaldesk.com. Right now, jury deliberations set to begin in the hush money trial against former President Donald Trump. The defense and prosecution made their closing arguments before 12 New York jurors who will soon make a decision that will go down in history in the first criminal trial of its kind, assessing alleged financial crimes of the former president. The National Desk's Atra El-Nashar with more.
The Manhattan District Attorney and former President Trump's legal team making their final arguments to a panel of jurors tasked with deciding whether or not he's guilty of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records related to an alleged hush money payment to adult actress Stormy Daniels in order to protect his 2016 campaign. The defense went first, arguing the prosecution did not meet their burden of proof and that Trump is innocent, plain and simple. Trump attorney Todd Blanche also painting the prosecution's star witness, Michael Cohen, as untrustworthy, telling the jury, quote, "Cohen lied to you." Echoing statements we've heard directly from the former president outside the courtroom.
This is a dark day in America. We have a rigged court case that should have never been brought.
The prosecution tells the jury even if they don't believe Cohen, there's still enough evidence to prove a conspiracy and a cover-up. Former U.S. Attorney John Fishwick expects the jury will reach a verdict by the end of this week, but there's no guarantee the end of this case will be cut and dry.
The three choices for the jury this week basically are guilty, not guilty, or we can't decide, Judge.
If there's not a unanimous decision, the judge can step in.
The judge then at that point does what's called an Allen charge, where he says, hey, look, you really do need to make a decision.
If found guilty, the sentencing of a former president would be an exceptionally difficult call for Judge Juan Merchan.
There's another hearing months down the road where each side would put on evidence. Yes, it's possible that he could go to prison or be sentenced to prison in this case. I think it's highly unlikely. The Trump team could say, well, he's not going to report to jail until all of our appeals are exhausted.
Now, after the 10th time, you'll recall that Trump violated his gag order, Judge Merchan said he was hesitant to send a former and possibly future president to jail, opting instead for a fine. Now, the judge may feel the same if he's handed a guilty verdict. However, the prosecution could point to Trump's willingness to violate court orders as a reason why he should be incarcerated.
And Asher, this is likely to be the only trial former President Donald Trump faces before the election later this year. What do we know about how the outcome could impact how voters view him?
Well, according to a recent ABC News Ipsos poll, 16% of Trump supporters said they would reconsider supporting him if he's convicted, and an additional 4% said they would no longer support him. Now, in swing states where just a couple thousand or 100 votes can sway a result, a conviction could mean real problems for the Trump campaign, again, if there ultimately is a guilty verdict.
It'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. Live from Washington, D.C., Atra al-Nashar, thank you. Meanwhile, outside of the courtroom, while closing arguments were ongoing, President Biden's campaign team held a news conference with actor Robert De Niro and Capitol Hill police officers who were at the January 6th Capitol riot in 2021. It was a change in tactics for the campaign that has largely ignored the trial, but they said they're not there to talk about the trial itself, but rather to shift the media's focus back to the Biden campaign.
We're not here today because of what's going on over there. We're here today because you all are here.
With Trump, we have a second chance, and no one is laughing now. This is the time to stop him by voting him out once and for all.
Trump's campaign, on the other hand, says this proves the former president's point that the trial is politically motivated by Biden's allies who want to keep him out of office.
So why the change? Why is Joe Biden now making this a campaign event after months of weaponizing the legal system against President Trump? Because Joe Biden's numbers are in the tank.
In Florida, Judge Eileen Cannon denied special counsel Jack Smith's motion to keep Donald Trump from talking about the FBI's ability to use lethal force during their operations at Mar-a-Lago back in 2022. Judge Cannon wrote that the motion was, quote, wholly lacking in substance and professional courtesy, but they can refile their motion. She also did not move to censure the prosecution, denying a motion by Trump's lawyers. 2 out of 4 inmates are still on the loose tonight after escaping from a Louisiana jail just outside of New Orleans. This happening over the weekend. One of these inmates is connected to a 2022 homicide, and the other was convicted on armed robbery and weapons charges. The prisoners got out through a weak portion of the fence at the jail during recreational time. The other 2 inmates were captured when they were found hiding in a dumpster. Minnesota officials are among those in the U.S. worried about a potential strike by Canadian border agents. Canada's Customs and Immigration Union voted with 96% approval to authorize a strike this summer. If it goes into effect, it could create drastic delays, maybe as long as 10 hours, to cross the border of the United States and Canada. This would impact both trade and tourism in huge ways. The Canadian government and the unions will begin mediation talks on Friday. New tonight, Virginia resident Tyler Wenrich has to pay a $9,000 fine before he can leave Turks and Caicos. Wenrich was sentenced today for carrying ammunition while traveling to Grand Turk for a bachelor party that happened in April. He also got 3 weeks in jail, which he's already served. Wenrich said he forgot that he had the ammo on him. The punishment is usually at least 12 years in prison. This was the second sentencing on 5 similar charges. A full-blown freakout. That's how Democrats are describing how they feel about President Joe Biden's re-election chances. That's according to Politico. As the National Desk's Matt Gelka explains, Democrats around the country are trying to sound the alarm.
Poor polling numbers for President Joe Biden and a strong fundraising month for former President Donald Trump. Just 2 of the reasons White House advisors told Politico they're souring on Biden's re-election chances. Recent polling has Biden struggling in swing states, and Trump brought the battle to deep blue strongholds in New Jersey and New York recently, as surveys show Black and Hispanic voters moving a little more to the right. Longtime Democratic strategist James Carville's message to his own party was blunt.
We keep wondering why these young people aren't coming home to the Democrats. We say, oh, why blacks are not coming home to the Democrats? Because Democratic messaging is full of.
Carville said his party is focusing too much on the Israel-Hamas war and not enough on economic struggles for families.
Talk about cost of living, and we're going to help deal with this. And don't talk about Gaza and student loans.
A Guardian-Harris poll last week showed a majority of Americans think the U.S. is in a recession, and they blame the president for it. There isn't a recession right now with the economy growing, but inflation and the high cost of living have been stubborn and hitting Americans in the wallet. Some Democrats say they need to get the word out.
I saw the polling this week that where Americans, a majority, think we're in recession. We're not. We have the strongest economy in the world. I think we have to do a better job, and I think the president's doing all he can, and this is where folks like myself can help.
The Wall Street Journal reports that some White House aides are encouraging the president to be a little more sympathetic about the economy instead of painting a rosy picture that many Americans just aren't feeling. The economy could end up being the deciding issue in November. For the National Desk in Washington, I'm Matt Gelka.
All right, Matt, thank you. And tonight, why humanitarian aid deliveries through the U.S.-built pier in Gaza have now been suspended. Then, how are Americans really feeling about the economy? What the latest numbers tell us. And later, the airport where a measles case was just identified and the symptoms to watch out for. Tonight, desperately needed aid deliveries through the U.S.-made pier in Gaza suspended after rough seas broke apart the floating pier meant to help shuttle in the supplies. The aid stoppage dealing a major blow to the American-led effort to create a maritime corridor for humanitarian goods to enter the war-torn enclave amidst a months-long Israeli siege that's allowed a mere fraction of the aid needed into the strip. Meantime, Israeli tanks seen in central Rafah in Gaza signaling possible expansion as IDF forces continue to claim their offensive is limited in scope. Reports of more civilian casualties on the ground in Gaza overnight as Israel faces mounting fallout from a weekend strike that led to a fire that engulfed tents and killed dozens of displaced people taking refuge there, something Israel said was a tragic error. The White House responding for the first time today.
Israel must take every precaution possible to do more to protect innocent life. As soon as we saw these reports over the weekend about the strike, we reached out to the Israeli Defense Forces at various levels to gather more information, and we've been actively engaged with the IDF and with partners on the ground.
The U.S. says they won't be stripping any support from Israel as a result of that strike. And as Israel investigates, forces they're offering their own explanation now for what they believe happened. The IDF admits it struck a site on Sunday near the humanitarian safe zone, targeting and killing 2 senior Hamas militants. The military says it believes the strike, however, inadvertently caused a secondary explosion of nearby Hamas rockets that then set fire to the tents. Israel claims it didn't mean to detonate those weapons, but the investigation is still ongoing. And the Rafah explosion killing displaced Palestinians, adding another layer of complexity to the efforts reaching a Mideast truce deal. Tonight, We're learning Israel has given Qatar, Egypt, and the United States an official written updated proposal for a possible deal to release hostages in exchange for a temporary ceasefire. Indirect talks between Israel and Hamas became deadlocked 3 weeks ago, but the U.S. was hoping to push for those talks to reignite this week. Americans are starting to feel a little bit better about the economy. That's according to the Conference Board's newest consumer confidence report. The confidence index increased from 97.5 in April to 102 in May, even though analysts had predicted it would go down. The number measures how people feel about the economy now and in the next 6 months. That being said, 78% of Americans now see fast food as a luxury. That's according to a new Lending Tree survey. Half of those said that's because of financial struggles. Fast food chains have significantly increased their prices in the past decade. McDonald's prices, for example, have doubled. The White House is announcing a new energy grid investment plan. It involves an initiative between multiple states and the federal government to make the electric grid better and make fixes faster. The goal is to cut down power outages and get more clean energy on the grid. It comes after massive power outages from severe storms. Meantime, President Biden's plan to electrify America is going more slowly than anticipated. National correspondent Kayla Gaskins looks into what's getting in the way.
Come on, jump in and give you a ride to Washington.
A central part of Joe Biden's presidency, transitioning Americans to electric vehicles.
The Great American Road Trip is going to be fully electrified.
The administration investing $7.5 billion to build charging stations across the country. But in 2 years, only 8 have been built. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg pressed for an explanation on CBS.
Why isn't that happening more quickly?
So the president's goal is to have 500,000 chargers up by the end of this decade. Now, in order to do a charger, it's more than just plunking a small device into the ground. There's utility work, engaging them, and the first handful, again, by 2030, 500,000 chargers.
Critics calling this unacceptable.
If in the private sector they spend billions of dollars to build electric chargers, and they got only 8 done at this point, there would be an outrage by the investors. They would want a change at the top.
One possible setback to constructing charging stations is copper production.
Copper is used to generate electricity. It's used to move electricity. It's used to store electricity. So above every other metal in the periodic table, copper is the most critical.
A study by the University of Michigan finding companies simply cannot mine enough copper to keep up with current EV policy goals. We spoke with one of the study's leaders, Professor Adam Simon.
Current mine production of copper is about 20 million tons per year, global. We need to double it to 40 million tons per year. And we cannot do that at existing mines. Like, no way, no how.
Simon tells us it's not as simple as ramping up production. More mines have to be built, and that will take decades. The Michigan study found transitioning to hybrid vehicles is much more realistic than full electric. I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National Desk, America's News Now.
Okay, Kayla, thank you. T-Mobile is buying almost all of the regional carrier US Cellular in a $4.4 billion deal, a sign of further consolidation in the industry. T-Mobile will get more than 4 million customers and control US Cellular's wireless operations. The CEO says this will give US Cellular customers better coverage and speed. US Cellular customers can stay on their current plans or switch to an unlimited T-Mobile plan of their choice for free. Concerns are growing about a possible second landslide and disease outbreak at the site of the massive landslide in Papua New Guinea. The debris from Friday's disaster in the Yambali village is creating unstable conditions. Officials say some people were evacuated today and more will be tomorrow. Death toll estimates ranging from 670 to more than 2,000. An Ohio billionaire is attempting to take a submarine back to the Titanic, hoping to prove it is safe, possible, and repeatable. Real estate investor Larry Connor will travel along with Triton Submarine co-founder Patrick Leahy on a two-person submarine nearly 2.5 miles deep to the famous wreck site. Although the date of the voyage has not yet been set. Last June, the Titan submersible imploded on a similar mission, instantly killing all 5 on board. In your health alert, a new study that looks at women and alcohol consumption showing moderation over time is critical when it comes to heart health. Medical reporter Liz Bonus explains why.
Hey there, hello to you. This new study says younger women who reported drinking 8 or more alcoholic beverages per week, more than 1 a day on average, were significantly more likely to develop coronary heart disease compared to those who drank less. It was presented recently at the American College of Cardiology's annual scientific session. The risk was highest among those who were binge drinkers. In other words, not drinking for days, but then having as many as 3 to 5 drinks at one time.
Somewhere between 30 to 50% of women will develop coronary disease as a result of alcohol consumption, drinking more than 8 drinks a week. Additionally, it also talks about the fact that when women binge drink, they're up to 70% more likely to develop coronary disease.
The study was focused on 18 to 65-year-old adults, and researchers wanted to find out why heart attacks and other forms of heart disease are on the rise in younger populations in the U.S. There is big concern about worsening health outcomes. At the same time, alcohol use and binge drinking have become more common among women than in previous decades. Nicole Mullins, a nurse practitioner with the heart team at Ohio's Christ Hospital, says the danger to the heart seems to come with a pattern of overconsumption of alcohol at one time.
It's those insults to the heart and the vessels that cause that disease to develop over time, and sometimes very rapidly.
What this really tells us is that a drink a day or a drink every other day is different, it appears, on the heart than trying to bank it or store it up to drink, say, only on the weekends, something our nurse practitioner says that we should all consider as we learn more about younger women and heart attack risk. With your health news, I'm Liz Bonus reporting.
All right, Liz, thank you. Coming up, a museum in Seattle is now closed after several of its employees walked out. The exhibit that caused the controversy when we come back. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering the issues that matter most to you. We're taking the pulse of America.
The doors at the Wing Luke Museum in Seattle's Chinatown International District are closed, it appears, until further notice, after more than 20 staff members walked out over the museum's latest exhibit called Confronting Hate Together, addressing racism, hate, and bigotry from different perspectives. Stickers and flyers in support of the Palestinian people are posted outside the museum, reflecting why several staff members decided to walk off the job over the exhibit, which workers say has text that says, quote, "Today, anti-Semitism is often disguised as anti-Zionism."
I think there's a lot of things going on with the Israel-Hamas conflict that
we are not discussing. So I think what they did was, I think they were just doing what they thought was right.
There are also petitions in support of reopening the museum and exhibit with the original language.
It was a shock.
For Vietnam veteran Paul Wallace, his peaceful Memorial Day weekend plans
And you see the two cheers sitting there drinking soda.
suddenly interrupted by a barrage of bullets.
It was like I was back in combat. All you heard was the shots and bullets.
Wallace and a friend ducking for cover behind cars as the shooters tore through his West Baltimore street.
I just saw a gray car go past. And I wasn't trying to see faces. I was trying to duck bullets.
In the middle of the day Saturday, a 15-year-old shot and 17-year-old killed just feet from his front door, triggering heartbreaking comparisons to his days at war. Across the city this weekend, a surge of gun violence taking 2 lives and injuring 6 more.
Measles are no joke. According to the World Health Organization, measles are highly contagious and sometimes can lead to serious complications or death. So what exactly is measles, and how do you know if you have it? Usually the biggest sign is a rash. Experts say you'd notice it on your face and upper neck. It could spread over 3 days and eventually lead to your hands and feet. That's why the Los Angeles County Department of Health sent out a notice saying a passenger at LAX flew into Fresno with measles. On May 19th, a traveler on board Lufthansa flight LH452 from Munich, Germany, landed at the Tom Bradley International Terminal around 3 in the afternoon. 5 hours later, that passenger flew from LAX to Fresno Yosemite International Airport, according to the flight number.
Well, coming up, how you can kick back, watch the biggest blockbuster movies out there this summer, and get paid to do it. Well, here's a job opportunity that sounds more like a vacation. Become the chief of cinema for the summer. Sounds like a dream, but it's real. Offered by CableTV.com, it entails you watching 5 upcoming movies of your choice at your local theater. $500 for each one, getting you $2,500. With only 7% of Americans preferring theaters over home viewing, the company is on a mission to understand why and perhaps change some hearts and minds along the way. As long as you're over the age of 18 and a U.S. resident, you can apply. And with many of us anticipating hot summers, what a great excuse to get inside and beat the heat. That does it for this edition of the National Desk. Thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful night.